Good Chodesh. Today's a new month of Cheshvan. It's nicknamed Mar Cheshvan, which means bitter, because there are no holidays in this month. Not only are there no holidays, but we're coming from a month that is filled with holidays. So there's a little bit of that blandness to it. At the same time, Mar means dripping, or represents rain, drops of rain. And it's the time when we switch and we start praying for rain. Rain is representative of blessings, of sustenance, of Hashem showering good things on us. So it's let's look at it as a very good month. There was once a fellow who went out drinking again. And this time he took his 9-year-old son with him. And he told his son, you see out the window, he points to the window of the bar, there's 2 trees. When I start telling you that I see 4 trees, take me home. And the son's like, I don't understand. What do you mean? There's only 1 tree there. The Torah tells us about the first incident where someone was drunk. And that's Noach. After the great flood, he's the only one, him and his family, that survived. The entire world was washed away, punished, deleted, if you will, as a restart. We know that it was really a purification process. But be it as it may, Noach, his family, and select animals survived the flood. And Noach comes out after a year of being in this teva, this ark, this huge cruise, and he goes to cultivate the land. And the Torah tells us what's the first thing he decides to plant. He does a vineyard. And he plants grapes. And he uses his grapes and he turns them into wine. And he drinks the wine and he gets drunk. And Torah is quite descriptive about what happens in his drunkenness. He gets drunk, he's in his tent, he disclothes himself, gets naked in his tent. And then Torah tells us that Cham, his son, the father of Canaan, he saw his father's nakedness and told his 2 brothers outside. So here's this son who's not exactly the most refined. He sees his father in that state, and he runs out and tells his brothers. His 2 brothers, Shem and Yafes, they took a cloak, put it upon their shoulders, and the Torah tells us they walked backwards and covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And this is what Torah is really elaborate on of what happened. So to summarize, Noach gets drunk, he's disclothed in his, is it not a real word?
No, his robe.
He's naked in his tent. Cham sees it, let's call it laughing at it, or telling his brothers about it. His brothers walk backwards with a cloth, a cloak, a sheet, and the Torah tells us multiple times how their faces are backwards, they didn't see, they covered it. Now, the Zohar tells us, reminds us, that everything in Torah is not just stories. Everything in Torah is a message, it's a guide. Eitz Chaim Hi L'ma Chazikim Ba, it's a tree of life, really represents the idea that Torah is light, it shines, and it shows us how we should live our lives. And when Torah tells us a story about someone like Noach, which it's less than positive, there's got to be a lesson here. Especially when Torah gives us all the details. It could have just said, he was drunk, this was not good, it didn't end well. Why do you have to come and tell us he was naked and his son laughed and the other sons walked and they walked backwards? Question number 1. Question number 2, not only is it so descriptive, but it's extremely repetitive. Torah says the brothers walked backwards. Now, if you walk backwards, you don't see what's going on behind you. And it's like 3 times it says they walked backwards. Their faces were turned. They didn't see. Torah never speaks like that. It's rare, very rare. It's so rare that when there's an extra letter in the Torah, we learn many halachas from it. Oh, there's a vav. We could have said it without a vav, right? So then it must be teaching us something, implying something, reminding us something. What's happening here? And in this case, which is not the nicest of stories, Torah is very repetitive. The Gemara in Menachos Page 29b tells us, I open up the exact page, it's amazing. It tells us like this, that Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, that when Moshe Rabbeinu went to Shemayim to get the Torah, the Gemara says, he found Hashem sitting and, let's say, refining or tying, it's called, but he was really outlining and making sure that the crowns on the letters in the Torah were accurate. In Torah, you have crowns on certain letters. The font gives it like some lines on top. We call it crowns. And Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, why bother? Like, it's just a detail. Who's getting involved in the crowns? And Hashem said, hold it. At the end of many generations, there'll be a man. His name is Akiva ben Yosef. This is the famous Rabbi Akiva. He's going to be Deiresh. He's going to derive. He's going to learn and explain the meanings of each one of these crowns. Okay? So an extra line in the font of the Torah, we managed to learn halachas, laws, nuances. Definitely, if there are extra verses or repetitive descriptions, definitely there's some kind of lesson here. What is that? Now, Rashi explains it, which is a basic explanation. The reason why Torah is repetitive is to tell you that you can walk backwards all the way till you get there. But if you want to cover him, normally you turn around for a second, you see what's going on, and you cover him. Make sure you do it right. They didn't even do that. So the repetitiveness is to tell you that their respect for their father and their values of modesty was so strong that even when they had to fix it, so to speak, clean up the mistake, they still didn't turn around. They went through the hassle, so to speak, and they covered him. Although he was drunk, although it was, quote, his fault, they still covered him without looking. Okay, that is a great explanation. It's Rashi's explanation. But there's one other detail in the repetitiveness itself of Torah, which we could have done without. You see, they walked backwards, and then it says they walked backwards again. Fine. That means even when they were covering it, they didn't see. But then there's a third time it says they did not see. This extra repetition really implies that there's more to the fact that they just stayed with their backs to their father while they covered him. It's too much repetitiveness. And it's almost like a style, but to have so many extra words in order to have a nicer style is not something which Torah normally does. It's out of character, and we need an explanation for it. So if we look a little bit deeper and you learn a little bit some of what Chassidus tells us about this, there's a fascinating teaching. And really it goes into the psyche of people and how people deal with issues and internal issues and how we relate to our shortcomings. Torah is really telling us that Cham, the son that laughed at his father and went and told his brothers, had internal stuff going on. He felt that whatever his father was doing, he has the same problem. He's prone to do the same thing. And his going and telling his brothers was his way of like blocking it, covering it up. He was trying to say, you're making fun of a problem that you see because you have the same problem within yourself. Shem and Yafes, the other brothers, they didn't have that decay, if you will, in themselves. And they were dealing with it in a much more mature way. Okay, there's a problem, but they didn't go make fun of it. They didn't tell anyone. They dealt with it without exploiting him any further. They dealt with it much differently. And I want to explain what we mean by this, that Cham was susceptible to the same problems as his father Noach was, and his way of overcoming that was scoffing at it, laughing at it. Oh, you know what he did? He did A, B, and C. He himself was ready to do it or knew that he has that within him. And I want to use the following teaching that Baal Shem Tov says. We know this teaching from the F.R.E.E, which was the Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl. Well, I know it from the Sikha of the Rebbe. He brings it in the footnote. But he quotes the F.R.E.E, who quotes the Baal Shem Tov. It's a very famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm sure you all have heard it. That when you see something bad in someone else, what you're really seeing is a reflection of yourself. Okay? And he explains, the Baal Shem Tov says, when you see something bad in somebody, you should abhor the evil component to it, but you should cherish their holiness. You should love and appreciate who they are really at the core. But what you're seeing, the behavior that you're seeing, or the characteristic that's bothering you, it's really a reflection of what's going on in you, and it's telling you that you have to fix it.
It's really there also in the other person, though.
Okay, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
Because the only reason, says the Baal Shem Tov, that you're seeing that is because you have to fix it. When you see bad, a tzaddik doesn't see bad in other people. He sees potential. He sees, the neshama. If you're seeing something wrong, your eye could see it. Your lens is somewhat blurred. Something that we have to fix on our own. Now, this is a very hard thing to understand because you're basically telling me that if I come across with anything, anyone that has a problem, and unfortunately there are issues out there, let's just call it criminals, and you know about it or you see it, does that mean that you have that problem within yourself? How could we say that? Let's take it further. The Gemara in Kiddushin, a tractate which talks about weddings and so on, tells us that kol ha-paisel b'mumay paisel. If you notice someone that walks around that says, oh, you are from a very bad family or something in your lineage is maybe not so kosher, whatever variances there are there, you should know that the offenses or the insults that he's choosing to use are ones that apply to him in some way. Okay? Back in the day when there was slavery, a slave had certain restrictions and certain, can't be counted for a minyan, in a quorum of 10. There are certain limits that a slave had. And there's other examples, we don't have to get into it right now, an illegitimate child who they're allowed to marry and so on. If someone goes and says, oh, I have information about Mr. So-and-so, and the information that he chooses is really ruining their reputation or bad-mouthing them, the Gemara says, be careful about him himself. There might be something to it. Okay? So what the Baal Shem Tov said in the 1700s, really, we have sources for this in the Gemara, similar ideas. This idea, you look at someone else, you see something, it's a mirror from you. How could we say that? How could I say that if I saw someone doing something wrong, you did business with somebody, and this person lied, cheated, he robbed you. Not only are you the victim, but you're saying, I have a problem with it myself too, because I noticed it in him. How are we to understand that? So there's another teaching of the Baal Shem Tov which will help us understand this. And that is a principle, it's fundamental to Hasidic thought, that whatever you see or hear in this world is a message for you, it's a lesson how you could serve Hashem. So if you happen to hear about something, nothing to do with you, you happen to hear an incident about something or somebody, and you wonder, I'm not involved in that, or it doesn't impact me in any way, it's not my field or whatever, you should know that the fact that you heard about it is a lesson how to serve Hashem. And it's a great avodah, it's a great service. It's not easy to have this focus that I'm constantly going to serve Hashem. And if I heard something, that's a lesson for me. That's teaching me something. Whether it's a mashal, and I now have an analogy about something, it's an inspiration. It's like, hey, that comes together with this week's parsha, or that teaches us what not to do, or that's something from Pirkei Avos or something, a Torah value that we have. Whenever you hear or see something, it's a lesson. So if you came across a person that is behaving immorally, or making wrong decisions, or just has bad midas, bad characteristics, don't say, there's nothing to do with me. What the Baal Shem Tov is really telling us, use it as a mirror to say, maybe there's something on some level within myself that I need to fix. The Rabbeim would meet a lot of people for private audiences, and they would ask them for spiritual guidance. Let's use an example. A person is a thief, and he comes to his Rebbe and says, give me some kind of path to correct, to grow. I messed up. I made mistakes in my life. I want to fix it. And he tells him, you should work on yourself in this way, or you should learn this, or say more Tehillim, or fast, whatever. We don't fast these days, but whatever path of tshuva he would give him, not just to stop, but to correct whatever blemishes are in his soul as a result of that. And every time they would do this, they said they would have to stop for a moment and try to find it within themselves on some level. I can't give you a remedy or truly be empathetic if it's so removed from my reality. There was one case where one of the Rabbeim stopped the whole private audiences. He needed some time. He said, I just can't find it within myself. He couldn't find on a lower level. But the idea is that if you see something, it's an indication of some sort. Why does it work that way? Because we have something, thankfully, that's called self-love. Okay, most people love themselves. All people love themselves, hopefully in a revealed way. And it says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, that hatred, sinna, arouses quarrels. There's fighting. There's, well, you hate, what? Quarrels. It says, midonim is what Mishlei says. But the idea is that when you hate somebody, somehow they're doing something wrong and there's a problem with them and their decision was not right. You're always finding stuff with them. On the contrary, when there's love, al kol shoyim techase ava. Over all flaws, love covers up. Which means if you're so in love with somebody and they're doing something wrong, you don't see the wrong. Somehow, either you justify it or you don't even notice it, or there's nothing wrong. You love them. The problem with that reality is that you can't see deficiencies in yourself because you love yourself. It's very hard to pinpoint and say, I'm really not good at this. Other people could help us. Go to a coach, go to a mentor, go to a teacher, ask them to help you. Because it's very hard to see within yourself what your problems are. The Mishnah in Negoyim tells us that a person could look at, Negoyim are certain, we'll call them stains, that could mean impurities, depending on the size, the color, the progression of it. But when you could look at someone else's stain and tell them if this is a problem or not. On your own, you can't. You love yourself too much to be objective. So because we love ourselves, and Hashem wants us to fix ourselves, He does this by way of showing us in other people. Now, we're not saying other people do things wrong in order to teach us a lesson. But the reason what the Baal Shem Tov is telling us is, one of the ways that we learn is by seeing our surroundings. Now, we may not have it to the extreme that we're seeing it in someone else, but it's a reminder, I don't know why we're using thievery, but it's a reminder to see how honest am I really. Maybe it's about returning lost objects. Maybe it's about whatever. There's many, many layers of this. Or you notice something, you say, that person is so mean. Maybe I should look at myself and see how kind am I. Maybe there's some area for improvement. So we're not saying, you're guilty of whatever you see around you, but it's Hashem's way of mirroring that we should be able to see within ourselves because we love ourselves so much, we won't find it on our own.
But still, the question is, if you see somebody being greedy, that person is really being greedy.
Okay, very good. So here's the next part to our class today. Thank you, Shalom, for bringing it up. Not only that, when you see someone doing something wrong, they are doing something wrong. Torah tells us that if you see something in someone else, you have a mitzvah. You have to tell them, your behavior is inappropriate. Okay, don't do it publicly. Do it in a way that's effective, but you do have to come and tell them. Okay? You can't just say, that's a good reminder to me. I'm going to go look into my life and see how I'm doing.
Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Who says that the person that's telling the other person who's doing wrong, their judgment is right?
That's true as well. We don't know if the judgment is right. And there's ways to do it. You have to talk to the person. They could explain themselves, justify themselves, clarify. You're not punishing them. What you're saying is, I noticed that you're doing A, B, and C.
You're giving
this
them
is wrong.
An opportunity.
Correct. We're not judging or punishing them. We're just talking to them. But the point of this component here is, how can you say that what you see is a message for you? Torah tells you, tell the person that what he did is wrong. So I want to answer that, and with that we'll explain why there's this repetitiveness in our parsha regarding Noach's drunkenness and how his various sons dealt with it. When you have a problem, okay, let's say you came across your friend. Your name is Ruvain. You came across your friend Shimon. Shimon is a cheater, a liar. He steals. Okay. Now Ruvain sees that, and he goes and tells his friends, never do business with Shimon. Don't lend him a nickel. He's a thief. I don't know how he can live with himself, how he behaves that way day in, day out. He has such a bad reputation. Okay. There's another guy, we'll call him Levi, because that's the third brother. He sees the same Shimon lying, and he says, this is terrible. How could we help him? What could we do that he shouldn't mess up this way? Is he really missing money? Is it a temptation thing? Is it something that she needs therapy for? So two people see the same problem. One goes and says, he's an awful person, and he's telling everyone, and it's eating him up about how this person that he knows is so bad. The other person says, hey, what can we do about this? How can we help him? Okay. And by the way, in relationships, it's a very, very strong and common issue that happens. You're dealing with somebody, whether it's a spouse, a coworker, a friend, and they're doing something wrong. Either you could say, they're such a nuisance, they're so annoying, they're draining my energy, or you could say, how could I help them? This is the key difference between Cham and Shem and Yafes. Cham saw a problem in his father. It was clearly a problem. And what he was saying wasn't lying. He was telling his brothers what's going on. They actually did something about it. But he went around and was like, oh, our father did this. Did you see? Do you know what happened? He's naked. He's drunk. Da, 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 da. Shem and Yafes, they said, really? And they took the cloak and they walked backwards. And Terah said they walked backwards and their face was facing the other way. And they didn't see the bad in their father. What they saw is, what do I need to do now to fix the situation? How could I help? And this is what it means when you see something in someone else as a mirror. It's telling you, what can I do to help the person? What can I do to remedy the situation? How can I use this information in a positive, in a healthy way? And this is what the Baal Shem Tov says when you see something. Because if you see evil, it's a message for you. Because really, you shouldn't see the evil. You should see an opportunity or a responsibility to do something. Okay, there's many examples we could bring, but when someone sees something wrong, there's two general reactions. One is of attack, whether it's internally, you start to abhor the person, or talking to others, or even screaming at the person himself in an unproductive way. And the other one is, can we fix this? How could we prevent this? Does this person need help? We're not in denial of reality. We're not saying that anytime someone does something wrong, big deal, it's not their fault, it's a message, or how can we help them? We know what's right, we know what's wrong, we know what black is, we know what white is, we know what gray is. But at the same time, we have two approaches how to go about it. Cham is the wrong approach. He goes and talks about it. Shem and Yafes go and do something about it. Not only do it, but in the most refined possible way, so refined that Torah finds it important or worthy to be repetitive about it, to go on and tell us in great detail, which it never does, about this idea. Now, they have a famous saying, I'm sure you've all heard it as kids, when you point a finger at somebody, you're pointing 3 at yourself or 4 at yourself, right? So the time when you go like this to somebody else, what you're doing is you're pointing at yourself. So when you look at someone and you see it doing something wrong, take a moment and think about what's going on within you. And maybe next time you won't see the bad in the first place, you'll see the need to help them. Dvarim hayetzim min halev, nichnasim el halev. Moshe Ibn Ezra says, words that come from the heart will enter the heart. And when you speak sincerely, it helps. Thanks for joining. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful month. And join us again Friday morning. We'll also have a broadcast, God willing, tomorrow from Uptown. But please do join us in live, in person, for some more learning. Thank you. Be sure to subscribe, share, like, comment, question.
Didn't